Hi, welcome to the Divine Insight Show. Thank you so much for joining me today. Such a thrill to have you. Appreciate your time and your audience wherever and whenever you're doing so. I have a wonderful guest with me today, Dr. Elizabeth Denley, who's the senior editor of Heartfulness Magazine. And we're going to be talking about the work of Heartfulness organization, as well as a specific book, Designing Destiny by Kamlesh Patel, and all the wonderful work that you do. Elizabeth, thank you for joining me.
Hi, Travis, and thank you. It's really a joy to be on the show with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you're over in India, and it's just so wonderful with technology to be able to just have this conversation. It's so wonderful. Can I just ask, what are you doing over in India right now?
Well, after retiring from work and my kids growing up and, my parents passing away, etc., I decided to come and be here. That was about 8 years ago now, with my main spiritual teacher, my guru. First of all in Chennai, and then we moved to this amazing ashram just outside of Hyderabad called Kana Shantivanam, which is about 1,400 acres of sustainable, beautiful nature in the countryside, where we've just about to inaugurate the main meditation hall, which can seat about 100,000 people.
Wow.
So, yeah, I know. It's the scale of everything here is just beyond your conception. Nothing comes in small here in India, and it's a wonderful place because it's also an eco-haven, a sustainability center for endangered species, rare species, organic farming, composting, water harvesting, solar, everything. So as well as being a spiritual center, it's also on the human and the material level, sort of cutting edge in terms of what human society can be all about. So that's where I live. That's
wonderful.
Where I'm based.
Yeah, and how did you get involved with heartfulness work and specifically Kamlesh?
Well, that's a long story, too long for this interview, but it goes back 30 years now.
Wow.
And yeah, my husband was working for the United Nations in Geneva, and his boss actually was a trainer in this system, an amazing Eritrean man who just inspired me, and he suggested that I try this. And it's interesting because I come originally from, well, I'm Australian, and I come from a very secular, almost atheist type background, like many Aussies. And I wasn't looking specifically for a guru or a spiritual system, but at the time when I did this, I had the first meditation and it just blew my mind. I just thought, my God, I'm home. I found what I need for my evolution in terms of consciousness and just being able to transform myself. And as a result of that, I realized this is something I want to look at, and I've never looked back. It's never become boring. It's never stagnated. It's an onward journey. So that's why I'm here.
That's wonderful. And so, you talk about this place that you get to in meditation, and what you felt like your home. And I think that is sort of a metaphor for knowing that we're on our path and doing in the right place for the right reasons, in the right situation and circumstances, which brings us great to the topic of, designing destiny, of course. And, I think the book, just for those of you who haven't read it yet, and I encourage, of course, that you do, get this book, Designing Destiny, Kamlesh Patel. It's broken down into three parts, sort of, why you practice in the first place, and in some part it talks about meditation and mindfulness and your practice, which we'll get into more, of course, today, and then lifestyle, and also destiny, fate, and free will. So not light subjects for the casual person. Let's just dive deep into the greatest adventure of the soul. How about we do that this morning?
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much it. And that's why I love working with Kamlesh, because he's just, that's the daily conversation pretty much. He loves, one of his favorite topics is evolution of consciousness, for example. And, just the other day, he came up with some new revelation about consciousness. And so what I do is I sit with him and he'll often dictate, because like many spiritual people who are receiving knowledge and information and wisdom, it's easier for him. Writing's not always the easiest way. So often he'll speak. It'll just flow through him. It'll come out. Excuse me. So my job often is to write or to record and then put it all down on paper for him so he can read it and then refine it and work more on it and go deeper into it, etc. So it's a wonderful job. It's you're consciously and constantly awakened, if you like, and challenged with new ideas. And because heartfulness is a system that's based in yoga, it's a very ancient form of yoga originally, Raja Yoga, yoga of the mind. And, it's been around, well, at least 10,000, 12,000 years. Nobody really knows how long. But the gurus in this system have done something magical. They've simplified it. They've taken the essence of everything in the meditation sphere from yoga, and they've turned it into basically 4 simple practices. Of course, there are many other practices to heartfulness as well, but these are the basic ones that people do every day. Beginners can do them straight off. You don't really need to learn too much to get started. And so, the whole purpose of this aspect of yoga, or the meditation side of yoga, is to expand your consciousness to the extent where then you can become one with everything, if you like. You're completely unified with existence. And so what's incredible is that because heartfulness has this specific technique called transmission, and transmission is a very ancient yogic technique, but it was lost from common use for a long time and then revived fairly recently. It's been there in many forms, and it's there in a number of other systems, but transmission's like anything else. It depends on the level of subtlety, or I don't know what the right word is, not just subtlety, but where it's come from, if you like, how potent it is. So the closer it is to the source of our existence, the more potent it is, to our center, if you like. And when you experience meditation with transmission, it's like it takes you straight there, straight to your center of being. So this, this incredible possibility, when you're here in Kanashantivanam, you're living in it, you're meditating every day, you're going to group meditation, but you're also there with him as he's exploring this, because the one thing about Kamlesh that's astounding is that he's not just in the spiritual realm. He's also a scientist. He was a pharmacist, and he's got a very scientific mind. He's constantly doing research. So he's constantly not only updating his own experience of what reality is, but he's sharing that all the time with everyone around. So it's a dynamic, very dynamic situation to be living in. And of course that relates to this whole thing of designing destiny. Nothing's fixed. Everything's constantly evolving.
Yeah, and I think as I'm just talking about my own experience and spiritual awareness coming to me at a relatively late age in life, after getting sober from addiction, and having this question of who am I, what am I doing, that can otherwise be filled with all these distractions that are around us every single day. It's getting worse, if not better, for most people. Phones and devices, though convenient to do, much like we're doing right now, can really pull us out of center, as you described. And so I think developing a practice, which is practice, right? We don't perfect it necessarily, because it seems like, as it's discussed, we continue to expand, gain knowledge from our experience, and then through greater awareness and connection, have greater learning, which seems like it's sort of a lifelong journey, which is just so wonderful. So can you talk briefly about what is a great benefit for people who might be interested. And I love the fact, frankly, just as a quick side note, that the way that this book is written and the practices encouraged in the book are quite accessible. You know, people can tend to be perfectionist and want to wait till they have the perfect, you know, altar in the room and feel like the second they start breathing, they're doing it wrong, and it's all this sort of egoic self-judgment popping up. But the practical reality and experiential reality is that it's a practice that we develop our learning edge that continues to expand. But from your own experience and that with working so closely with Kamlesh, can you describe the sort of on a practical level, maybe what would be helpful for people in doing the practice or something like that?
Yeah, sure. So let me describe a day, might be helpful.
Yes.
So, you know, if you look at an average day of a human being, there's a cycle. And whether we're caught up in all the craziness that you're talking about or whether we're not, we're still in the cycle. So during the night, our system goes into a sort of a mode where we're absorbing energy. Because we're sleeping, our brain waves go down to very low levels, down in deep sleep to delta wave, which is almost stopped, but it's just normal baseline functioning. So everything is in a sort of a stillness. And if you wake up early in the morning before dawn and it's dark and there's still that stillness just at the time of dawn when the energies are not coming in or going out, they hit that stationary point. And if you meditate at that time of the day, you're meditating in stillness outside, so it's quite easy to be in stillness inside. It doesn't matter how you sit, you know, if you can sit cross-legged, fantastic. If you can't, it doesn't matter. You can sit on a chair, you can sit however you want to. So this isn't a yoga where you have to perfect asanas in order to be able to meditate. Although obviously if you sit cross-legged and all your energies physically are focused inwards, it helps. But what do? Because now I have a bung knee, I can't always sit cross-legged on the floor. So I sit in my chair and I meditate. And it's my most precious, beautiful time of day because it's still, nobody's banging on the door. You know, it's got that absolute feeling of peace and calmness. And so I do my meditation then. And I've been doing this for 30 years. So you would imagine that, you know, I would be pretty good at it by now. And a lot of the time I am. But there are plenty of times when I have thoughts and I get distracted also. It's not a bad thing. You know, meditation's not about having to be perfect. Meditation's like an experiment. It's a journey and it's like the weather. It changes every day. So some days I will go into deep samadhi within the first 5-10 minutes. I'll still be aware because it's what's called saj samadhi, which is natural samadhi, where you're still alert, but you go into that deep state where you're completely connected, completely in that balanced, still state of mind. Those days I think are lovely, but they also, you know, that's just them. There are other days where something's bugging me or I have something come up from within that really pulls me to have to look at myself. And so that sort of meditation is completely different. It may be a meditation where I'm looking at some aspect of my character that needs to be worked on, or some situation that I need to solve, some problem that needs solving or whatever. It doesn't leave my mind so easily. I'm not in that stillness. And what you find when you're working with the chakras, because in this system you start with the heart chakra. The lower chakras are taken care of by themselves, and there's a reason for that if we have an opportunity to speak about it later. But we start with the heart, which is the center of our being. It's the midpoint in the human system. It's the point where the soul, the mind, and the body are conjoined. And of course, this is where the blood pumps from also out into the rest of your system. But it's the center of our being spiritually as well. It's the seat of the soul. It has this vastness about it that takes us into other dimensions. And of course, it works with the rest of the mind, the aspects of the mind that in modern science we normally think of as being associated with the brain. But of course, the mind is not just associated with the brain, it's associated with much more. Not only the central nervous system, but also other realms. It's what we call the subtle body in yoga, the Sukshma Sharira. And of course, it can expand out way beyond the physical. But it's through the heart chakra that this happens. So imagine all the chakras of the human system are connected. And when you go on this spiritual journey, you're moving from chakra to chakra as you go. Moving's not the right word. It's a silly word to use, but it's the only word I can think of to describe it. So we're moving from one energy center to another. They're wakening up, all the different ones. And so each time you move, you go through a cycle. So you can imagine it's the same as, imagine if today, now, we were to get into a spaceship and go to Mars. And we're coming from Earth to Mars, right? So we're going from one energy center to a different energy center in the solar system. So Earth has its qualities. And we're so used to Earth that we're comfortable here. We know what life's all about. We know where to do shopping. We know all sorts of things. And then suddenly we go in a spaceship like in Star Wars through hyperspace, zoom, and we're there. And suddenly we're on Mars. We know nothing about this place. It takes us a while to settle down. So it's the same moving from chakra to chakra. So if I'm at the first chakra in the heart region and I get comfortable there, everything opens up, I have wonderful experiences, my meditation feels superb, and I get so comfortable in that space. I know that space, I become one with that space. And then somebody moves me to the second chakra in the heart. First one is earth, second one is soul, is Atman, is space. So you can imagine you're going from a grounded earthly energy to suddenly being in the ether. It's very different. And so obviously at that time your meditation is going to be completely different because you've moved, you're in chaos in a way, you've changed your environment, you don't know what's going on, your mind's like, what's happening? When you meditate at that time, it's very restless. But then, like if we were to go to Mars tomorrow and after some time we'd get used to it, we'd settle down, we'd start to feel good. We'd start to enjoy the place. Same thing happens at the chakras. So after being restless and disturbed, suddenly you start to go deeper into the bliss of the new place. And of course, the soul chakra is just bliss. It's just love. It's just oneness with the divine. It's an amazing feeling. All you want to do is meditate. So you can see that the weather in meditation is not just about you. It's also about the journey. And then, of course, from that Atman chakra, you move to the fire chakra on the left upper part of the heart. And is fire still and peaceful and calm? No. Fire is volatile energy that is pushing you upwards. You know, it's like a candle. The flame's always going upwards. It's the energy of love. You know, love for something higher, love for the divine, all these sorts of things. But also on the other side, it's also anger, because anger is also a divine emotion in the positive sense. In the sense that it's an energy that forces you to change. It forces you to look at yourself and move to something higher. And then, of course, you move to water energy at the fourth point in the heart, which is very different from fire. So meditation will always change depending on where you are in the journey. And that's the beauty of it. There is no staying stuck or stagnant at one place, because this is a journey and it's an infinite journey. And all these different points are connected. And so it's not that it's linear and you just go from here to here. Your whole being is this sort of resonant, I don't know how to say it, resonant vibrational spiral of energies that manifest in different ways. You know, one bit will plop up here, another bit will plop up there, and you never know what's coming, which is so wonderful because it's just a beautiful experience.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think one of the things that I appreciated about the work, your work with the Heartfulness Magazine, which you're the senior editor for, and also the discussions in the book, Designing Destiny, is really the relationship between this aspect of self and the practice of meditation, but also how that translates into aligning to one's destiny.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about that part, how meditation can help us to do that?
Okay. This is also a very long topic, but I'll try and keep it very short. Okay, all of us have a background. We all have a family background. We have a cultural background. We have our own individual background. If you believe in past lives, you would also have a background of your various past lives, which could have been in many cultures. But it doesn't matter if you don't. It's not important. The thing is, we all have a past of some sort. Like you were speaking about addiction before. You know, that's one type of past, which in a way is a journey that's taken you to where you are now. Because you're searching for the same thing. You're searching for an alternative consciousness that brings you connection. We just do it in different ways at different times in our lives, and hopefully we find a very healthy, comfortable way to do it eventually. So we all have a past, but often we're limited by our past. We're stuck into fixed patterns because this is how we were brought up, this is what we were taught to believe as kids, this is our experience with our parents in our culture. It can be something as dumb as, I'll give you an example. The very first time that I was in India for this meditation, and I was there with my husband and our first child. I was pregnant with the second child. And we were staying in an apartment with about 30 other people. There were 2 bathrooms, but one of them was non-functional. So you can imagine the morning, right? Everybody trying to use one bathroom. And I realized that I was quite wedded to something as silly as brushing my teeth at the same time every morning, because it annoyed me that I couldn't do it. Right. And I was laughing at myself, realizing, God, this is a habit that I'm really stuck on. So it can be something as silly as that, or it can be something as profound as a deep fear of abandonment that's come from early childhood, or, you know, something that really affects you on a deep emotional level. But they all impact us because, you know, as neuroscience says, we build neural pathways according to our habits. And we create neural pathways that can either become very fixed, or we develop a neuroplasticity where we're more adaptable. So you find some people are very fixed in their habits, their way of being. They have a very sort of fated existence. And then you find other people who are quite flexible and adaptable. And they're different personality types. But all of us are to some extent bounded by our past, our habits, our fears, our patterns, our tendencies. And, you know, it could be the tendency, if somebody gets mad at you, one person will get mad back. Whereas another person will go into, you know, oh, woe is me, why is this person getting mad with me sort of thing, and becoming a victim to it. Somebody else will be just totally neutral and like, you know, what's wrong, man? Why are you upset? Sort of thing. It's okay. Just chill. We all have our patterns. And when those patterns are too fixed and we can't work with them, we can't change, we recreate. And we recreate tendencies, we recreate experiences in our life. It could be the bad experience of being abandoned. It could be the experience of thinking that, you know, all women are such and such, or all men are such and such, because we've created that in our thinking. And if we stay with it, if we don't change, then we're stuck with it. And we'll keep recycling those experiences. We'll keep recycling lives until eventually something kicks us out of it. And we go, you know what? I've had enough of this. I don't want this anymore. And it happens to us at some point in time with our lives. What happens when you do a spiritual practice? For a start, when you meditate, you get to look at yourself in a different way. You get to work with yourself. You get to work with your inner feelings. Not just your thoughts, but your feelings and your deepest feelings. And they come up like this in front of your face, like a mirror. And it's your choice. Either you can say, okay, now it's time to do something about this, or you can go, you know what? I can't deal with that right now. And there's no right or wrong in this, but you have the opportunity to change. But as well as that, there's another practice in heartfulness, which is, it's just a revolution in a way. It's called cleaning. And cleaning is like a mental detox. What happens in cleaning is that you start to remove the root vibrational impressions that are caused by these past experiences. In yoga, they're called samskaras. But what they are is, so imagine now your field of consciousness. You can visualize it if you like. It's like it's like a field, even you can imagine it like an ocean. And in its original pure state, it's completely still. But then because of all our thinking patterns, our memories, our imagination, our thinking, everything, we get vibrational patterns forming in that field of consciousness. And it's just like in water, you know, like waves and eddies forming. And in nature, energy tends, any sort of vibration tends to form spiral or circular patterns, you know, like the electrons around an atom, or if you look at water going down the plug hole in the bath, it spirals in a certain way, either clockwise in the northern hemisphere or anti-clockwise in the southern hemisphere. But this is how things happen in nature. So in your energy field, say suddenly you get angry and you've got this still field of consciousness. Suddenly, whoa, you'll get a whirlpool in that field of consciousness and it'll affect you. And its energy is moving because thought and feeling are energy and they're moving. And so if you keep recreating that, it gets harder and harder and harder. It forms a deep impression, an energy knot, if you like, in the field. And so that's associated, one knot will be associated with one whole sort of suite of experiences that are all interrelated with the same energy vibration. And these form in your spiritual anatomy, in your subtle body. And so when you're cleaning, you're removing that. You're sort of untying the knot, loosening it, and eventually clearing the field. So instead of having to analyze all the, you know, what happened to me when I was 3 and then what happened to me when I was 5, which is also okay to do, there's nothing wrong with that, but you're actually getting to the root and like pulling it out. And so there's this immense capacity to work on yourself because you're not struggling with this knot of energy anymore. It's gone. It's been released somehow. So your ability to change, to transform yourself, to design your destiny, to change what your fated pattern would be, just is orders of magnitude better because of this cleaning process. So that's something incredibly potent, incredibly powerful that anybody can do. I mean, it's a very simple process. And you do it every evening in the same way as you take a bath for your physical body. You're just cleaning out your energy field, basically. And when you see somebody who is really doing that effectively, their body feels very light. It's like they're not holding burdens, holding heaviness in their system. So that's one way you can design your destiny.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just thinking, you know, a lot of the work that we do with hands-on healing and other practices in energy medicine is to have, you know, the support and help of someone else do that. For example, people that come to me and I see and help the clients resolve these patterns from seeing intuitively and clairvoyantly and empathically where this emotional lock, for lack of a better term, or stagnancy
Yes.
existed, and then help to release it through the movement of energy. This practice allows one to essentially do that themselves, which
To
is
some
really,
extent,
yeah.
yes. You can do it to a certain extent yourself, but like you're talking about, there are also trainers, because it's all, and then there's also the guide who has a capacity to do this even more effectively. Because when I do it for myself, I can, of course, I can work on myself, no question. But I also go to another trainer, even though I'm a trainer, once a fortnight or so, to do a meditation session with them, so they help me release that stuff. And then, you know, the ultimate is to also have a session with the guide, which generally happens in group meditations, because there's layers of the heart, there's layers of these. I'm sure you see this in healing, layer upon layer upon layer of these impressions that form in us. And so there are surface ones that are much more superficial. But when you get down to the deeper layers, the things that you've been carrying since the time of creation, they're very deeply embedded in the, not only in the spiritual anatomy, but in our psyche. It's much easier to have somebody else clean those out.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It certainly does. It just reminds me of the image that people describe of when we were asked, what is it that we do when we help clients that come to us? I basically saw the image of a mirror and a flashlight. It's just nothing but allow you to see
Yes.
your own self in the
Yes.
true existence that you are, without judgment, which is so powerful for people in releasing these projections of who we might think we are, these patterns that are locked into our systems that exist in our emotional body, you know, our mental plane, and even the soul. It was fascinating for you to describe the experiences, and particularly around the heart meditation. And I'm sure you're familiar with the work of Greg Braden, another
Yes.
author, that talked about the heart coherence and how when we bring our consciousness into our heart, that really that experience alone is healing. It activates our own internal healing processes in our own body, and wonderful things. I also seem to recall there is, as for something that folks can do, one of the things I like to do on the show is to have guests talk about one thing that people can do to transform their lives, say right now in their day. And I believe there's an app. Is that right? There's an app for this meditation process that exists?
Yeah, there is. So there's what's called the Hearts app, where you can, if you download the Hearts app either on an iPhone or on an Android, it's free. And there are trainers on there all the time, 24/7. So no matter where you are in the world, you can find a trainer. And they will do meditation with you. They will do this process of cleaning with you. There's the 4 main techniques. I'll tell you about those also. I mean, you can also do them yourself with audios if you don't want to sit with a trainer. You can try this out. The good thing about the Heartfulness is you can experiment as much as you like, because it's a practical system. It's not about anybody telling you what to do. It's about your own experience of your own soul, your own subtle bodies. And so you can try this meditation with or without transmission to see the difference for yourself. You can learn the cleaning through an audio. You can learn the prayer through an audio. You can learn the relaxation through an audio. And relaxation is another thing that's incredibly important, like you were talking about, in the crazy world we live in the VUCA world we live in. Because most of us are in chronic stress mode all the time. whether it's driving to work or being on the internet all the time, or just dealing with the bombardment of media and, you know, all the stuff we consider very normal in a modern context. You know, it's chronic stress levels, low level but chronic. So we're always in what we call sympathetic mode. If you look at the autonomic nervous system, and there are two parts to it. There's sympathetic system, there's the parasympathetic system. So sympathetic is our active mode. A lot of people call it our stress mode or fight or flight response. But it's better to think of it as our active mode. Well, we also need it. You know, we need to be active physically, we need to be active mentally a lot of the day. But then the parasympathetic nervous system is what calms us down, what gives us our ability to rest, to be peaceful, to pause, to digest our food, to think, to contemplate, many things. Most of the time in modern society we're in sympathetic mode, often till we go to bed, because we're watching TV or we're doing something, you know, active with the lights on till late at night. So one thing you can do, and this is a very practical tool that can help you in any situation, because if you experiment and examine your breathing, it will tell you which mode you're in. So if you everybody who's listening, just check and see now breathing, whether your right nostril or your left nostril is more dominant right now. Or if both are the same, but more often than not, it'll be one or the other. If it's the right nostril, it means you're in active sympathetic mode. Your nervous system is responding for activity. Energy is flowing outwards, and you're doing what you need to do during the day, whether that's physical labor or mental activity or whatever it is. If it's your left nostril, you're in parasympathetic mode. You're in calm, still mode. Energy is coming in and being absorbed into your system. And we switch during the day. We switch roughly every couple of hours, but more at night we're in parasympathetic, more in the day we're in sympathetic. But say you get stressed. Say you're at work and your boss yells at you, or you're in traffic and somebody rams up the back of you or something like that, and you get stressed. Or you have a fight with your partner or your teenage kid or whatever, and you need to calm down. There's a very simple exercise you can do. You put your right thumb over your right nostril and just breathe 10 times right down into your belly with your left nostril. Slowly, you're activating your parasympathetic nervous system. You're calming your whole body down. And what you'll find when you do that is that you can very easily pull out of any angry mood, pull out of any stressed mode, pause and just recalibrate yourself and balance yourself. It's so simple. It's a yogic pranayama technique. But what it does is it gives you that opportunity to just go, you know what? Let me just stop and get myself back together again. So
Really
that's
wonderful.
one simple thing.
Yeah, as you were of course demonstrating that, I also was trying that, and I noticed a shift in my body awareness as well. And I think that's one of the things that we know from neuroscience and even the work around epigenetics, is that our cells respond to our consciousness and our thoughts and all of that. That's a conversation for another day.
Yes.
And however, though, I'm so grateful for everything that you've been sharing about the work of heartfulness and specifically the work of designing destiny. How can folks learn more about the work, get more information about heartfulness, or get the book?
It's quite simple, really. The book is being sold on Amazon, through Hay House, through www.designingdestiny.com. The book's a great starting place because it gives you a complete overview of, first of all, about how we can change, and the fact that not everything in our life is fixed. Some things are, some things not. It gives you an overview of the practices. It gives you an overview of the lifestyle changes you can expect to happen. And that's around all sorts of things like sleep, eating, the way you speak, so many different things. How you communicate with other people, how you can deal with difficulties, suffering, pain, all that sort of stuff. And then, of course, the stuff on destiny, which is my favorite. But it's a bit more out there. So to learn about the Heartfulness more, you can also go to www.heartfulness.org. You can download the Hearts app. You can also go on our YouTube channel, which is called Heartfulness Meditation, and see lots of videos. But maybe the book is a great place to start. It depends on what you like doing. If you like apps, if you like listening to things, if you like following guided meditations, the app's probably the best thing. If you like talking to another person about all this and doing it with another person, you can go to one of our Heartfulness centers, which are called Heart Spots. They're all over the US. There's a few in LA, up the coast of California, East Coast, everywhere else in between. And that you can also find on heartfulness.org through the Heart Spots. If you like reading, the book's good. If you like watching videos, YouTube's good. It depends on, everybody has a different way of connecting with this stuff. You need to find what works for you.
Yeah, the difference in how our learning styles are as well. Some people are auditory, experiential people. Others are visual, experiential people. And then there's me, the empiricist, the one that just does things until we realize what works and what doesn't, because it might be difficult to really understand the differences. So I'm so grateful for your time and joining me on the show, Elizabeth. It's just been an absolute pleasure. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about your work or the work of Heartfulness before we end the show?
Only, I guess, that the impact it's having in developing countries, well, I don't know if you'd call India a developing country anymore. It's one of the biggest economic powers in the world now. But still, a lot of people are rural. The thing I love about this also is that it's not just for a small subsection of the community, those who are maybe really interested in yoga. It's for everybody. So in India, for example, there are whole districts where all the villages practice heartfulness. All the school kids are doing it in schools. Like in one state last year, there were, I think, 400,000 school kids learnt heartfulness. And of course, what that's helping with is things like reducing suicide rates, self-harm, the fact that a lot of kids in today's society, they're way ahead of us in some ways. They've come in with different gifts. And yet the school system, the possibilities from them are not evolved enough for them yet. But because they can do this, they can find their own way. So I think that is really inspiring for me. The fact that this next generation can do something even better than us and can use these as tools to take humanity forward.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show to share your wonderful wisdom and insight and the techniques that people can use right now to help bring some more awareness into their lives and some peace. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Travis. It's been a pleasure.
Wonderful. Thanks. Have a wonderful week.
Okay, you too.